What's going on, everybody? It is your boy Zamboni. I am an herbalist and astrologer, and it is time to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. As always, thank you so much for being here, for being a part of this community, for watching this video, and all my dailies, and for sending those to a friend if you find them helpful. Thank you for getting in my Patreon, where you can find an Astro Basics course, you can find an electional report to help you with your timing for your small business or for dating properly or these kinds of things. And thank you for sliding in my Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. That is just a super direct and helpful way to help me to continue to make all of this free content. Thanks for getting in Spotify, you know what I'm talking about. Thanks for listening to the music. Let's talk about the astrology of the week ahead. This week we don't have a lot of exact aspects this week. We've got the new moon in Sagittarius. The sun is going to move into Sagittarius. So we already saw Venus and Mercury moving into Sagittarius. Now we've got the sun moving in there as well. And so this is a departure from what's going on in Scorpio, right? The nodes are still in Scorpio Taurus, but there's not going to be a lot of action there for a little while until we get into Taurus season in like April of next year. So we've got some time before we see more drama on that axis. Instead, we are now on to the Sagittarius and Gemini axis of things. So when I think about Sagittarius and Gemini, so one of the things that I do, and you can check this out in the Astro Basics course in my Patreon, the way that I teach signs as well as planets is I teach them as pairs of opposites. So Sagittarius and Gemini are opposite to each other, right? Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, Gemini is ruled by Mercury. So there's a kind of bigness to, we can think about Jupiter things with Sagittarius. There's like an expansion kind of quality and an abundance and all this sort of stuff, right? Whereas Gemini is associated with the hands, with the digits, right? So there's something about like the fine detail of it and this kind of thing. Gemini is also very much going to be like, what Mercury likes to do is sort of like segment things and make them intelligible by turning them into smaller pieces. This is as opposed to Jupiter, who likes to sort of like see the whole forest, not concerned about any one particular plant, but can see the whole forest and get this like larger wisdom or meaning of the whole experience, right? And so these are both necessary and important things, but they are opposite to each other, right? So now we currently have Mars retrograde in Gemini. So that is to say that Mars in Gemini is going backwards, is going to have to, whenever we see a retrograde then or a retrograde, then we're always going to see our re-words showing up. You're going to have to do it again. We're going to have to rework, rethink, reimagine, this sort of stuff, right? We're going to re-Mars in the area of Gemini, this fine detail. We can think about planning. We can think about making things intelligible and understandable. One of the things that's going on right now is we're dealing with major confusion. I don't know what I want. I don't know what is even possible anymore. Like this sort of stuff is showing up here big time, right? Part of that is that Mars in Gemini is making this close square to Neptune in Pisces. Neptune is extremely confusing, confounding, foggy, very good for dreaming and for imagining, for, getting into the possibility of it all. And indeed, now is a good time to think outside of the basic parameters of living. You know what I mean? Like we've sort of been conditioned into a way of life, into a lifestyle, into a set of values that may or may not be sustainable into the future, right? And as we see more and more major upheaval taking place, we've still got this Saturn-Uranus square, which is definitely looking like a lot of unrest, and it's looking like difficulty in getting the sort of the basic foundational stuff, the food, the shelter, the hugs and this kind of stuff, right? Thinking of Uranus and Taurus, like having to sort of move around new ways in order to find that stuff. We can also think about Uranus and Taurus as sort of throwing a wrench in the machine that is Saturn. So Saturn is trying to like organize and get us there's a certain kind of efficiency, or the machine wants to work properly with Saturn around. Saturn is the manager, right? And Uranus is going to throw a wrench into that system. So whenever we think about the systems, we can think about supply chains and all this sort of stuff, right? That bring us to the Taurus stuff, and the housing and the hugs and all the rest of that. Then there's a wrench in that, right? And as a result of there being a wrench in that, then we're seeing a lot of kind of upheaval. We're seeing people there's worker shortage and whatever, right? And so the very idea of work is coming into question and this sort of stuff, right? So all of this is going down, and there's an opportunity here to imagine outside of that box. What if work didn't mean work anymore? What if work was a different idea? Or what if food came from a different place? What if food was a different thing? I'm hearing about lab-grown meat and shit like this, right? So thinking outside of the box in order to solve novel problems, right? There are ways to do this that are, you know, I always, with Uranus, I come back to the experimental nature of things. And so you'll want to try stuff and see how it goes. With Mars in Gemini, square to Neptune and Pisces, there's definitely a sense of like, I don't know, let's try it, right? Give it a shot, see how it goes. As things this week move from Scorpio into Sagittarius, the sun is going to do that. Then we're going to get the new moon in Sagittarius. And then, so Mars Mercury and Venus are currently in Sagittarius as well. And they're going to move into an opposition with Mars in Gemini. So there's going to be this kind of like tension, the difficulty, and opposition is like, you know, they're like one wants to go one way and the other wants to go the other way, and there's beef around that, right? Now, of course, we can remember that Mars retrograde is the best time to go out in the sky and or to go out and look at Mars in the sky, right? Because when the sun is down and it's dark outside, then that's when the sun is opposite to Mars, right? So when the sun is down, Mars is up, and you can look, and that's when Mars is at its brightest, and so it's real good sky watching. But there's definitely a sense of opposition, a sense of tension. I always talk about Mars as being exciting in a motivational kind of way, but often that motivation being associated with disruption or discomfort or something like this. So we're not going to see that opposition yet. That opposition between the sun and Mars is probably 2 weeks out, and next week is going to be Mercury, Venus opposite to Mars, right? So what we're seeing this week is stuff is moving into Sagittarius and beginning that sort of like excitement, the crescendo of all that. Last week I talked about like turning the volume up, right? The volume definitely comes up in Sagittarius, and that's just general from like Scorpio, who prefers to be kind of quiet and hidden and occluded, that sort of thing, moving into Sagittarius, which is like, here I am. Let's remember that it's Jupiter in a fire sign, that it's expansive. It's, you know, there's a kind of zealotry that can show up with Sagittarius. So it gets loud there, right? But we are not at peak volume yet. We're sort of in a crescendo. Things are moving and moving and moving. And then once we arrive at the full moon, so we've got the new moon this week. So that's going to be the sun and moon, as well as Mercury and Venus in Sagittarius, right? And so that we're going to see that this week. Those folks are all going to make a square to Neptune. They're all going to also make a sextile to Saturn. So there's something here that's like, you know, thinking about how we're going to turn this excitement and this energy and maybe harness with Saturn. That's what Saturn likes to do. Saturn likes to make a channel or boundaries, right? Give it an area to flow into. So there's something here about taking that energy and making it workable or making it actionable in some kind of way. But if we make it actionable, what are we trying to do? Which direction are we trying to perform in? What are we trying to do here at all? And Mars definitely does not know. This square to Neptune and Pisces is extremely confusing. I highly, highly recommend the journal. Few things are going to be more valuable than journaling right now. Making your lists, making your pro-con list to get an idea of what's going on. Maybe making a Venn diagram of some sort. A friend of mine talks about like in the job search, what kind of things am I good at and what kind of things will people buy? What kind of things do I actually want to do and what kind of things are valuable to other people, and sort of seeing where those things interact. This kind of stuff, like making a diagram, making a graph, making a list of some sort in order to just get an idea of what's going on. One of the things that I always encourage people to do is, if you've got a bunch of like weird emotions going on, some of them might be tangled or conflicted or this kind of thing, making sure to keep a heart of compassion, understanding that feelings are feelings and you're gonna have them, and you don't necessarily need to judge yourself for having feelings, for not feeling the right thing or whatever it is. But this is a good time to simply take stock of what emotions emotions are taking place. And then as we move into the next week, it's going to get more and more exciting. Thank you so much for being here. I super appreciate all y'all. If you want to slide in the Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, I always appreciate that. Listen, I can't help myself. See y'all.